So Scoring to Picture is a collaborative effort integrating a variety of media, including digital video and audio, that are often produced by more than one person or facility. As a result, a key skill is the ability to import and work with many media elements in a variety of formats whilst maintaining the same timing references, especially when the music needs to be synchronized with critical moments in the film or video footage. Computer-based music production has greatly facilitated the composition of music for film and video, and computers are now powerful enough to stream digital video and audio in the same application, ensuring that methods for synchronizing between music and picture have been simplified. So what we're going to do in this lesson is just to work through a project looking at the workflow for setting up a project to deliver a soundtrack. So it's still entirely appropriate to work with an external video deck synchronized to a DAW using SMPTE timecode, which gets converted to MIDI timecode. But the norm for today's media composers is to work with digital video clips. Logic leverages the Apple QuickTime engine for video playback and therefore can open a digital video clip or movie in any format supported by QuickTime. So what we're going to do is just open up Logic. I'll go to File, New from Template, and we can see down here we have a template which is music for picture, and that's for composing to picture. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open an empty project and then import a movie and look at the considerations we need to make there. So if we go to Choose, and if I close that library, I don't need it. So I'm going to import a movie, and the movie will have a frame rate and a sample rate, and Logic can work that out for me on import. I don't need to go off and find out what that is. So if I want to import a movie, I can go to File, Movie, and Open Movie, or I can use my global tracks. So if I just click that icon or press G, I get global tracks, and I can edit these. So these are track lanes with arrangement, markers, time signature and tempo. I go to Track, Global Tracks, and I can hide and show various elements. So I'm going to hide the tempo track. In fact, if I just control click somewhere here, I can hide things. I don't need signature. And if I click on marker, I can turn on movie and make that a little bigger. If I click the word movie, I can open the movie here. So I have a movie on my desktop, which I'm going to click and open, and it gives me an option to extract the audio track. So the audio tracks give me a clue as to where everything is, and if I have the dialogue on a separate track, I get a visual reference as well. So, and obviously I want to open the movie, so if I go OK, the next thing I get here is it says sample rate in the movie doesn't match that of the project. So the default project is 44.1 kilohertz, but the movie is the standard rate of 48 kilohertz. So I'm going to use 48, and then again it's going to say what the movie frame rate does not match that of the project frame rate. So the movie has a frame rate of 23.98, and the project is currently set to 25, so I'm going to use 23.9, and there we have my movie on my timeline and a larger version of the movie. If I now close that, it puts it in the inspector. If I double click, I can open it again. And just to look at where those functions were, if I go to File, Project Settings and Synchronize, there's my frame rate function. So it's auto detected it to 23.9. That's my different frame rates going up to 60. And the sample rate, file, project settings, audio, so it swapped it from 44.1 to 48. So that's the first stage. I haven't saved it yet, so if I go to File, Save As, and just on the desktop I can save it. Excuse me, to close that. And I can save assets into that folder, so I can copy audio files, samples, alchemy data, ultrabeat samples, space designer impulse responses, any Apple sound library content, and of course movie files. I'm going to want to make sure that that's checked so that the movie files go with the project. Obviously this makes the project larger, and if I'm just creating audio I don't need to check that. If I check that, that keeps everything together. So I'm going to save that onto the desktop. So that's stage one. I am of course working with SMPTE timecode, and I need to establish a synchronization between the video and logic. And you can see that the video here has a time code of 3 hours, 2 minutes, 50 seconds and 13 frames. That's the SMPTE standard. If I just go up to my control bar here and open giant time display, so logic's default settings, so the start of a project is 1 hour, which is a standard, just in case I need some pre-roll. So 1 hour, and then minutes, seconds, frames and subframes. And you can see the problem we have at the moment is they're not running in sync. They're showing two different times. So I need to make this one match this one here. The way to do that is to go to File, Project Settings and back to Synchronize. And you can see that bar position 1 bar, 1 beat, 1 division, 1 tick, plays at SMPTE 1 hour. So if I was to change that to that, it would mean that these two should match up. So I'm going to type in 03, 02. Did you notice that jump then? 50 and 3, like that. So the SMPTE bar position now is the beginning of the video, this video clip. And if I go to View and Second Ruler, I can actually see a timeline here. But strangely, on this particular video, I have a weird thing that happens where this video suddenly jumps on ahead and doesn't line up anymore. And I think that might be because there's a little bit of audio at the front that causes that to happen. So I'm just going to go back to movie. I'm going to remove the movie, remove that audio as well, and just to re-import. And it seems to have the effect of fixing it. Strange thing that's happened there, but now when I press play,
Sophie, it's me. I screwed up.
Nate, is that you?
You can see that they're the same. Now that's very important, and it'll become evident maybe a little later on. So logic now plays back at the same time frame as the video. So you can see that wherever I drag my playhead, the video also plays along in sequence, and of course I've got my visual reference here of the dialogue just to help me. So if I was to add some music now, I might have some notes from the director, or I might have attended what's called a spotting session where the director marks specific points on the time code to illustrate locations for musical cues. And we can use markers for this task, which enable us to place notes at specific SMPTE positions to use as timing references. So I can actually, if I just press the forward slash function just on the right of my keyboard by the shift function, I can actually navigate to position this way. So I can click in here, and if I was to type in 3 hours 4 minutes 25 seconds 1 frame and 10 subframes, it jumps there. So it just helps me if I want to quickly navigate to somewhere. I can just type it in here, and that's using the forward slash function. If I now go back to my movie global track, I have a function here which allows me to create marker sets from scene cuts. And what that allows us to do is it'll detect where the scene goes from the lady in the helicopter to the chap sat in his flat, and it will give us markers at that point. So rather than markers based on bars and beats, it's marked on cuts. And to do that, if I just go to movie and create marker set from scene cuts, it's done it. And that can be really useful for a number of things. These markers now, as you can see, they appear in the marker global track. But if I go to lists up here and marker, here they all are. And by option clicking each one, I can move the playhead to play from that marker. And the other useful thing I like is that there's a line here. Can you see that line? If I option click that.
Yeah,
That
no,
tells us where the playhead is
listen,
in
I
the
need you
sequence.
to come back. Me. For me. Not for a con. Listen,
That's pretty cool. And I can actually, these are scene markers. So it says it's a scene marker, and I can convert this to a standard marker. And the reason for that is that sometimes musical cues are not sort of based on scene changes, or for example, when I'm going from one scene to another, the musical cue might actually start in one scene
not the
and
team.
then roll over to another scene. So I can actually change these scenes to standard markers, and then I can sort of start moving them around a little bit, which can help with composition. So that's markers, that's in lists, and if I option click, I can jump to a point, and if I double click at the bottom here, I'm able to put some comments in for each scene. Of course, the director might do that as well. So when I do extract out those markers, I might have some information here as to what the director's expecting. by way of sound design or composition. So if I go to preferences and recording preferences, my audio recording file type is set to BWAV, which I tend to do anyway. I always tend to set it to BWAV format. And if I now just on this, say, static track here, I pop that into record and just record silence, but just record something.
No, listen, I need you to come back. I need you,
No, no.
So I've recorded that there, and I'm going to now just move that. So I've just moved it to bar 1. If I go to my local menu by control clicking on the audio file, and I go to move, and I move to original recording position, it does just that. And not only that, and that function becomes at the top of my shortcut list. So the last function you use becomes the top of the list, if you like. There is a shortcut, it's not terribly handy, but it's Command, Option, Shift and R. Better check that. So Option, Shift, Command and R. So any file that's been recorded as BWAV, you'll be able to just drag it to where it was originally recorded, which is very handy for these sorts of things. And we can also lock to SMPTE timecode position so that we don't move things around by mistake. So if I select all, I'm going to edit and select all, or Command A, and then I go to functions and lock SMPTE, you'll see that a lock will appear on these files, and I can't, it makes it difficult for me to move these by mistake, which can be useful in such a sort of a complex project. One of the simplest techniques for positioning an event on the timeline is by manually spotting the video as you drag the event into the arrange. So to demonstrate that, I've just removed one of these helicopters.
I can't hear you.
So you've got the static still, but you're missing the helicopter. So if I just go over to my audio files, I've got 4 helicopters. 1, 2, 3, 4. I've just removed the 4th one. And as this was recorded as a BWAV, I could just come along and sort of drop it in, and using my SMPTE position, lock position, this function, move to original recorded position, it will move it where it needs to be. I could also align it to the scene. So if I go back to markers and I go to, I just double click here, and if I go to, I can see that that's where the helicopter comes in. So I can position it by playhead by just moving the playhead to the beginning of that scene, which I just deleted, I didn't want to do, and aligning it to the playhead. So I can do it that way, And one other useful function is to play from selection. So if I wanted to suddenly jump back to that piano part, if I just select the piano and shift play,
I can't hear you.
it'll play from
And
region, which can be very useful for quick navigation.
Not the team. Me. Not the team.
So while you are working on a project, you may wish to supply your client or director with a new video that includes your soundtrack in order to solicit feedback. So you could conceivably export a high quality audio to the video, but you'll more likely want to send a compressed version of your mix, significantly reducing the file size so that it can be easily sent via the internet. And the way to do this is by going to File, go to Movie, and export audio to movie. And I've obviously got something selected there. And I can choose from lossless, linear PCM, AAC or Apple lossless, Sono AAC, and I'm able then to reduce the bit rate, and then go to save, and this dialog box appears, allowing us to choose the audio tracks from the project's video file. So if you want to include that in the new movie, and then it will bounce it out. I don't remember where I've saved it to, so I'm going to do it again. Oh, it's put it in the audio files. I'm just going to pop it onto the desktop. And that should be somewhere on my desktop with the rest of the videos. Right, that's it there.